I'll always say, love you. I'm like really trying to get him to say it back. And I'm sure he said it this morning. So I was like, oh, did you hear
Oh,
that? Did you hear that? But my husband was rushing to get out the house and everything else. And I was like, I'm sure he just said it. I'm sure he just said it. So
oh.
I'm,
So, and she's
wow.
now getting responses and dates for interview. And yeah, and I'm stressing about stuff that a lot of work, coming back after the new year. So the stress levels are high.
Yeah,
Windy road. I could drive there. In fact, we were talking about going for a wild swim there and having a bit of a nosy.
it's so
Um,
cool.
but one of the things we were talking about, because I've heard that you know how it makes it look like they all live in the castle.
Mhm.
Hi, Natalie. How are you today?
Hey, Helen, I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Good to be back. Good to be back.
Yeah.
We've not recorded for a little while now, so it's really nice to be here with you today, talking about these things that really matter to us.
Yeah, for sure. We've been catching up and planning and things in the background, so it's nice to press record on that button there and get going.
Yeah, and lots of fun things in the planning bag to talk about as we go along. But
Very
let's
fun things. Very
let's get
exciting.
this first podcast in the bag and then see where we go from there.
Yes, it's going to be
So,
hard to contain all of the treats that we've got coming up for sure.
yeah, exactly. But that's nice. Let's try and contain it and we can kind of hopefully um so the usual agenda for today, we'll start off with our woeful and wonderful that's been happening in our exciting lives, and then we're going to talk about the topic that we're bringing today, which I cannot wait to talk about. And then we'll close with our usual open, aware, engage. So, Natalie, what is your woeful that you're bringing today?
So on the run up to us meeting today to do this recording, I was trying to think of what my woeful wonderful would be, and then my woeful literally happened yesterday, and I feel so terrible about it. But I was in the car and we'd done an Aldi shop with my two little ones, and then as I usually do when I park up, I checked my phone, and then I got distracted by an email that I needed to pass on to some colleagues. And then my little girl was saying, Mummy, can we get out of the car? I need to go in. I need to go for a wee. And I was like, yes, babe, okay, just give me a sec. And then carried on trying to send this message. And she was like, I'm really desperate. So I was like, right, okay. So like rushed out the car, tried to get her and couldn't get the belt off her because she'd like clamped her legs. And then I managed to pick her up the car. And yeah, she'd had a little dribble and she just got so upset. She was like, Mommy, I'm so sorry. And I just felt awful. And I just said to her, I was like,
Mm,
look, that was mummy's fault. That wasn't on you at all, darling. I hugged her really close because she was just beside herself. She was so, so upset. So I just hugged her in really close and I just felt awful because it was completely my fault. And she's old enough now not to be having accents. Like she told me she needed to go, and I just got that extra little bit distracted of yeah, just for
well,
that
maybe she
extra
needs to tell you a
second.
little bit before she's absolutely bursting at the
Well,
seams.
this is something that we're working on, and she did give me somewhat of a heads up and I got distracted. So I'm holding a bit of mum guilt about that, but we spoke about it and I said sorry and then got her in the house and she was going and then I bobbed out, grabbed the shopping and came back in and I was like, I am so sorry, darling. Like I should have got out as soon as we got back. And she said, it's okay, mummy. You already said sorry now. It's done. And I
Oh,
was like, oh, bless you. I was like,
you're
thank you,
so
babe. So yeah, so it all came okay, but just that kind of woeful kind of yeah, that distraction with something that kind of took my attention in that moment. And she asked me as well, and I still was caught up kind of focusing on something else. So just that was a bit of a woeful moment for me because I was like, right, I need to not be doing that and giving her my attention, especially when she asks for it for such a need as well. So that's my woeful, I think, just a bit of mum guilt there from yesterday. And then my wonderful, this was tricky because there's been so many little highlights and stuff at the minute. But one of the things that happened this morning, and I've been wanting it for so long, and it almost like happened by accident, and I'm not even sure if it definitely did happen, but I'm going to take it anyway. My youngest, who anybody who's listened to old episodes, I was doing episodes whilst I was pregnant with him, and he turns 2 this Friday coming.
Crazy.
And he's coming out with bits of language and things now. And when he's leaving, so if he's going up to bed with his dad or if they're leaving the house, I'll always say, love you. I'm like really trying to get him to say it back. And I'm sure he said it this morning. So I thought, oh, did you hear
Oh,
that? Did you hear that? But my husband was rushing to get out of the house and everything else. And I was like, I'm sure he just said it. I'm sure he just said it. So I'm
oh,
not 100% sure if he said it. But I'm sure I don't know. Part of me is like, I'm sure he said it.
trust your
Yeah.
heart.
So hopefully that'll start coming now. Like he says lots of really sweet things and he's like, bye. That's his favorite. He like says it in that tone of voice, like bye. And it's dead cute. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he said love you this morning. So I'm gonna take that as my wonderful and just little bits of his
Definitely
language that's coming out and yeah, it's really sweet.
gorgeous.
Yeah. How about you? What's your woeful and wonderful that you're coming into the room with today?
Well, interesting, because as usual, there's kind of you can't have one without the other. So, the woeful stuff, I mean, I actually wrote down a lot because there seems to be a lot of stress in my house just now that we basically have no bathroom. We've pretty much got a toilet and kind of random shower thing in the middle
Oh
of the
wow.
shower, and the delivery of the stuff's been delayed. So there's that. Um, as if you've listened to previous podcasts, you'll know I have 2 teenage girls, so already the stress levels are up. It's prelim time. They're
Mm-hmm.
both going through prelims, and also my eldest daughter has applied to all her unis, and she's
Wow.
now getting responses and dates for interview. And yeah, and I'm stressing about stuff that a lot of work, coming back after the new year. So the stress levels are high. But at the weekend, it took a bit of a turn, and my partner and my eldest teenage daughter had a bit of a run in, shall we say.
Okay.
Very, very unpleasant. Um, and really, I felt really in the middle of it, because I could see
Mm-hmm.
both sides of the coin. So I'm doing my best with that,
Yeah.
and there's only so much I can do. And yeah, I'm a bit sick of feeling like I'm in the middle of it all. So
Yeah.
um
Caught in between them all.
yeah, so that's that. But then my wonderful is that there's loads of opportunity happening, and actually when my daughter did react the other day, she was really speaking up for herself and she was really
Nice.
saying what was bothering her. Um so I felt kind of proud of her for doing that and being able to do that. And actually, I was kind of looking at it from that wider perspective for both of them. My partner's got stuff going on that he's working through that he's finding challenging, and she's going through this major transition. Like, it's so exciting for her. Her life is about to change in a few months, so she's very stressed, and her hormones were playing a major part in it, and she was really aware of that, and she just didn't like the way she was spoken to, so she asserted herself.
Yeah.
And um and she's worried, and but also excited, and like just kind of seeing her with this different perspective for me was really wonderful. I thought, okay, well, maybe I have to take all this as
Yeah.
part of where
She's in
she's
that
at.
period of transition, isn't she? Like
Yeah,
age transition, but also like physical locality and education
yeah.
and all that kind of stuff as well. There's a lot going on for her, isn't there?
And she's really realizing that what she really wants to do is art, like art college that she's applied to at
Okay.
different universities in Scotland, and she's getting positive responses from them all. So she's not only got her prelims, she works really hard. She's wanting to do the best art portfolio that she
Mm.
can, and oh, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. It's such a subjective thing as well, isn't it? When it's like a
Mm.
creative arts type one.
Yeah, yeah. So that's my woeful and wonderful. There, you're welcome. Thanks very much.
So going on to our topic for today. We both got very excited when we started chatting about this general gossip we were having the other day at the beginning of a meeting, and we're like, "Oh, this is one that we could bring to the table." So, do you want to
Well,
say what
I
it is?
think well, yeah, I'll see what it is, but I think because maybe you've got more of the background that I'm missing, it might be I can't wait to hear all this stuff. But what we're bringing today is very relevant, very current. The Traitors. We
Yeah.
are obsessed. I'm obsessed. Me and my daughters were obsessed. It's been such a connecting thing. But we were talking about the Traitors and the sisterhood. So
Yes.
Natalie,
So
where are you at with all?
I'm very excited to learn that it's what down the road from you. Is it like 30 minutes, 40 minutes from where you
Yes, so
live?
as the crow flies, it's not that far at all, but because it's a kind of twisty, windy
Yeah,
road, it's I could drive there. In fact, we were talking about going for a wild swim there and having a bit of a nosy.
it's so
Um,
cool.
but one of the things we were talking about, because I've heard that you know how it makes it look like they all live in the castle?
Hmm.
Well, apparently
They
they don't.
stay out, yeah, they stay away from it. They don't actually stay
I've
like,
heard they stay in the
yeah.
courtyard hotel in near the airport in Inverness.
Ah, okay.
So the castle's called Ardross Castle, and it's a beautiful part
It
of the
looks
world.
gorgeous. It's
Yeah,
inspiring my husband to want to go for a holiday into Scotland anyway. I've always
yeah,
wanted to explore Scotland more, but he's really about it now. So yeah. Anyway, sisterhood. So
yeah.
I found it fascinating. Well, the reason we kind of spoke about it the other day, wasn't it, was that my husband said a comment of, "Do you think they're gonna bring?" They were recruiting a new traitor, right?
Do we need to
And
pause for a moment? And for those who don't listen or watch or obsessed with the Traitors, maybe just explain what it is?
I mean,
Because we can't.
yeah, there's Google options there, but yeah. So the Traitors is
True.
about a castle full of people from all over the place. They started out with 25. And then they have to do different challenges, and then they have to, there's some nominated within the group that are the traitors, the rest are the faithful. The faithfuls then have to try and get rid of the traitors, because at the end of it, they win money. So the faithful want
A
to win
lot
the
of
money and
money.
share it between themselves. If a traitor gets to the end, then they win all of the money for themselves. So the traitors have to be sneaky and hide and everything else. Each evening, or most evenings, the traitors get to murder someone. And then the rest of the faithful, well, all of the participants, sorry, get to banish someone each evening as well. So there's two people that leave most programs, right? Someone gets banished and someone gets murdered.
Yeah.
And then it's the job of everybody to find the traitors,
Traitors.
banish them, so that they're out of the game and the faithfuls get to win and share the money at the end. So that's it in a very nutshell. There's lots of different things that happen along the way, for sure. Yeah, and then the conversation that came up the other day was that once they get down to so many traitors, they can recruit. So with this series, all of the chosen traitors were women. We
Yay.
had a woman in her 60s, I think, and then to younger women, I think around the 30s, I think. And the age thing is important, I think, for some of the things we're going to talk about. Um, but yeah, so and then it dwindled to they lost one of the traitors fairly early on. And
Yeah.
then the conversation came up of like the option came up that they could recruit. So then the conversation in my household was my husband said, "Do you think they're going to recruit a male?" And I was like, "Absolutely not." Because as a group of women, like my gut instinct was like, absolutely not. Because I was thinking, as a group of women, I don't think I would. Like, if I was in that position, I wouldn't want to bring a male traitor into the mix. And my husband was kind of like taken aback and asked why. And I said to him, because and this is where some of the backgrounds that you mentioned, Helen, because in the last series, it was all the traitors were no, there was a woman traitor and two male traitors, and then the male traitors ran away with it, and then only ever seduced um other males to become part of the group. And they very much led it. Like there was a lot of dynamic, really interesting characters and stuff going on. And so it might be that because I've seen the previous series and saw how the men were the traitors and how they ran the game, And this time I was like, no, absolutely not. Why, like, as a group of women, why would you introduce a man into the mix? And my gut reaction was because they try and take over,
Mhm.
ultimately throw you under the bus and take the money home at the end of the game. And my husband was just like, not necessarily. And I was like, well, that's what my gut reaction says. So I found that quite interesting. That's what we spoke a little bit about the other day, wasn't it, Helen?
Mhm. And actually, it's interesting watching the whole dynamic of it because I think it would just be such a different game if there was a man in there. I mean, and and I don't know why, but you can see the men are out there kind of in the group in the castle when they're having their discussions, really strategizing and really kind of getting frustrated and annoyed with themselves for, I mean, they all are, but it seems to be more present in the men. I don't know what dynamic it would bring, but there's no way that I cannot see. I don't know what's going to happen this week for the final week because they're
Mm,
saying there's going to be something happen. It's going to change the course of the game. Um, it will change the whole day. I love that there's a sisterhood. I love that they've stuck together and there's no question of bringing a man in to it.
yeah, and even when it was fairly obvious that another traitor was going to get banished by the group, did you hear the conversation they had where she was like, "If it's going to go that way, vote for me, and
Yeah,
you go all the way to the end." And I thought
yeah,
that's such a different dynamic to if there'd been a guy in there. Like I just
because it's
can't
women
imagine.
supporting women, whereas
Yeah,
men don't have that. I mean, that's a clear thing to me that women are much more kind of in tune and supporting and
that
encouraging
solidarity
them.
of a
Uh-huh.
sisterhood
Yeah.
type thing. And I mentioned to you because I've been watching The Uncloaked as well, really trying to do my homework for this podcast. I was watching The Uncloaked and the comment that Claudia made in the last season when the men traitors seduce another men, or like wrote on their piece of paper that they wanted to seduce another traitor and it was a man, and she just made this comment and it was beautiful. She was like, oh, another man, just like the olden days, and then
Uh,
walked out the room and I was like, oh my gosh. I was
uh-huh.
like I'm surprised, well, not surprised, but I imagine there's male producers and people involved in the background of it. And the fact that that made the edit, I was like, yes, something
Yeah.
needed to be said because of the way they were playing the game as well. And there was lots of egos and things going on and things like that in the last season. But she said that. And what I saw on Uncloaked from this season, so the Uncloaked is the podcast to kind of debrief after each episode, was the winner of the previous season was on there, and he said when Claudia said that comment, he'd not even noticed that that's what they'd been doing and that they'd only been recruiting men and only looking to recruit men, and that there was initially a female trait and they got rid of her pretty much straight away. They really threw her under the bus. And when he said that on reflection, when he heard that comment, that kind of woke him up to be like, oh, hang on, yeah, like it is like a boys club. And I was like, but I think it's such a metaphor for so many different areas of life as well. And it's obviously very intense because and it's televised and all that kind of stuff. So there's a different sway to it. But it brought that conversation to the table for me and my
But you
husband
know
of me
what
being
she
like,
is
absolutely not.
doing? I'm interrupting you because I've almost just had a light bulb moment just thinking about it. But from the very outset, Claudia chose three women.
Yes. And
That's just,
I think she did that on purpose. I do, because of the way the last
oh,
game went.
we need to invite her to the podcast and ask what the rationale for that was. But yeah, from the very outset, she's done that.
And maybe it was to spur conversations like this, because again, that was brought up on the Uncloaked podcast, of like, did she do that on purpose? Is it because of how
Mm,
last season went? Blah, 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 and I'm kind of like, actually, yeah, like it makes a lot of sense. And like you said, it has completely shifted the dynamic
hmm.
in the castle and the way that it's all being played. And you said there about the way that the men are kind of doing their gossipy bits and their
And they're trying to kind of manipulate
figure it
situations.
out and things like that, and they're almost and it's funny how what they're picking up on, they're clutching at straws. They don't know who the traitors are. They
No,
like really don't know who they are.
no.
And they seem to be clutching at straws of and when they're like claiming that it's one of the men that's the traitors. They're really going for it, like really
Uh-huh.
attacking character. Like it's a bit crazy. But something that struck me, and I wonder whether you noticed it as well, when they tried to recruit someone and they refused, but what they actually wrote in the request, in the seduction note was that they wanted her because she was a strong, independent woman. And I'm so surprised that she didn't bring that to the table, because she didn't tell everybody straight away that she'd been tried to seduce anyway. And
Mhm.
then and then when she did tell everybody, she didn't tell them that line, because I was like, that is a dead cert giveaway. If you've been invited because you're a strong, independent woman, I don't know any man that would invite a woman to come and do something because she's a strong, independent woman.
Well, on that note, even within there is a woman there who's guising as a nail technician when actually she's an army. I don't know what kind of
Yeah, she's an
branch
army
or
soldier.
regiment.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she's hiding that, like she's not telling anybody. Has she told people now?
No, she's not
Um,
told anybody. And there's, again, on Uncloaked, they kind of theorized why. And it's because an army person won the last one. But then also because of her being that strength that brings, and but the fact that she's playing that down is really interesting, especially for
mhm,
our podcast of that unspoken womanhood. The fact that she's playing that down, and
mhm.
she's come in with like blonde hair, Barbie pink
Pink suit,
clothes,
yeah. Mhm,
like very Barbie-esque, and that she's kind of playing that role.
mhm.
And yeah, it'll be interesting when she comes out, her reasoning behind that, of why she's
And I
hiding
wonder because
her
she's
true
feeling
strength.
pretty attacked, isn't she? And I wonder if she's struggling actually to keep up that. Anyway, that's a different subject
I mean,
altogether.
she
But that's
bites. If she gets any attack, she bites. Like she
mhm,
does kind of
mhm,
go back at them. And then what's been really interesting in watching the Uncloaked is seeing people's reaction to that um truth being revealed, and they've
mhm,
all been kind of like, oh, that makes sense, like
mhm,
why she's so strong underneath and all this kind of
mhm.
stuff. Even that, like, strong underneath, that judgment based on her presentation, with the blonde
Yeah,
hair and the
yeah.
pink and all of that. It's really interesting. It's just a really interesting game, isn't it? The perceptions that people have of people, of face value, or like what they pick up on
And the other
sometimes.
the other thing that, sorry, I'm interrupting again, but the other
Yeah.
thing was there's two older women. One's a priest and the other one's a retired opera singer or something, and she was a traitor. And it was interesting. I thought how they fit. They kind of so there was the sisterhood, but then there was
They
the
stuck
older women's
together.
sisterhood.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's so interesting. Like, why is that? What are they feeling that's making them feel that they have to? Because the priest, I think her name is Lisa,
Lisa. Hmm.
she actually said that she kind of had a suspicion that Linda was a traitor,
I didn't
but
want
she
to
felt she
believe
had to
it.
stick with it, or
Yeah.
they felt that they had a certain kind of comradeship that
Yeah.
the others didn't have. It's just fascinating. I love watching it. It's just so interesting.
Seeing those dynamics, isn't it? And there's another one in there pretending that she's Welsh, and yeah, just really interesting. The kind of, and there was the two sisters in there
Hmm.
as well, and the
But they were
dynamics
quickly
between them.
taken out. So,
Yeah.
what's your kind of final take? Because you sound like much more of a voyeur of this than I am. Like, what's your final take on this sisterhood and what it's bringing to this season in comparison to others?
I think that definitely that complete different dynamic to the last season for sure. I am kind of worried about the sisterhood as it stands with the traitors, because one of them thinks that the other one's going to be true to them to the end, and they're going to stick together, and the other one's already like
Yeah,
planning how to
that's been
throw her under
amazing.
the bus and all this kind of stuff, and the other one just definitely doesn't see it coming. So that's going to be interesting how that plays out in this final week for sure. But I can't see that there's going to be a male traitor at all this season. If they get the opportunity to recruit again, I don't think they're going to choose a man. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of their take on it all, and why
Hmm.
they chose to stick with the sisterhood. Like, that's what I'm looking forward to seeing, is like the reveals of everything. And then what I've noticed with this season is that I'm really on the traitor side rather than the faithful side, and I wonder whether that is because of
Mhm.
the sisterhood.
Yeah,
Um,
I know my daughters are both on the side of the traitors. They're really gunning for them. My own has been like, "Oh,
yeah. Where I was
no."
very frustrated in the last season with the way the guys were playing it as the traitors and the kind of arrogant edge they had to a lot of things. Like, although they're female traitors, there doesn't seem all that much arrogance in it. And
Mhm.
maybe that's because we're women and we're kind of seeing it in that swayed perspective. Um,
I think
yeah,
women do find strength in numbers, so don't they? And I guess men, it's more kind of maybe it's just my own perspective. There are many other perspectives, but I suppose men have that kind of evolutionary hunter-gatherer. They need to be in
mm.
charge and
And that's what I've
um
noticed with how they're accusing each other in there,
mhm,
and how they like turn on each other and things like
that kind
that.
of alphaness that comes out.
Yeah, it's really
Mhm.
interesting. And there's not been as close friendships developed in this cohort, I'd
Well, they
say,
seem to
compared to last
change
time.
quickly, the
Yeah,
friendship.
yeah.
Mm.
Or like as soon as one like the clique was mentioned, and then they kind of dispersed and turned on each other.
Ah,
Like,
I
yeah.
could not. I could not. That I am the worst liar ever. I was saying to the kids the other day, I absolutely could not be in a program like this. Couldn't. I could not.
I don't know if I could. I think I'd yeah, I don't know if I could. I told my husband he definitely couldn't. He couldn't deal with the pressure and the challenges and people like trying to scope him out and all that kind of stuff or trying to figure it out. But I don't know if I could. I don't know if I'd want to though, to be honest.
Mhm,
There's other programs that I do over this one, but yeah. What
mhm.
about you? What's your kind of like take home perspective of this season?
Well, I guess I mean I think I only really started to get into it halfway through last season, so I wouldn't call myself an expert, but I have just really enjoyed it being a thing, that it is women sticking together in a sort of way, in some sort of way. And yeah, from the very outset, it was about the sisterhood, and I like that focus. It's quite refreshing to see, and it kind of just makes me think, why is this so refreshing to see? You know,
Mhm. Yeah.
so that's kind of my final take on it. But bring on this week until we find out what's going to happen.
I know, I'm excited for sure. So, to bring us all together, shall we reflect on our open, aware, and engaged? How does that sit with you today?
So I guess if I'm being open with myself, that I have to try and not intervene in some of the tension between other people in my house, and I have to allow for the anxiety for some of that. It feels uncomfortable, but I think part of what I have always done before is that I try and fix it. I'm a bit of a rescuer. Um,
Mhm.
I'm not doing that, so I'm kind of open to I'm going to not do that, but it's going to make me feel a bit more anxious. And I'm going to be really aware of how much time I'm spending on things like faffing and um I can kind of when I'm stressed, it's very easy for me to faff and make myself look busy, and I'm just going to be aware of that. I'm going to try and pay attention to do that, and notice how much of my kind of early history of not speaking up will show up, and try and reconcile with some of that. And I'm going to, in terms of a sort of committed action and be more engaged, I'm going to chunk out my tasks, and I'm going to try not to get distracted, and I'm going to prioritize the things that really energize me. An
Mhm.
example being that you and I decided to go out for, instead of meeting on Zoom the other day, we had our headphones in and went out and walked in nature, and we both felt really energized on the back of that. So I'm doing more of that this week. What about you? What are you
Excellent.
open, aware, engaged?
Um, Open to more conversations about the societal divide, kind of going back to the topic we spoke about today, um, and open to hearing the other side of the argument. So I like when my husband brought that question up the other day, I was very much like, well, absolutely not. But then kind of allowing him that space to say his piece in that as well. So kind of being open with that, and with regards to like my family stuff and my woeful that I brought today, like being open with myself of not always getting it right, and that being okay. um and then aware of where my attention is. I think being more aware of where I'm splitting my attention possibly too much, or what I need to be focusing on in the here and now. And engaging with like scheduling that time in, so having that chunks of time throughout the day or within an hour even of being like, right, this is what I'm focusing on now, and then I'll focus on the other. And then like a big intention for my 2025, not that I like New Year's resolutions and all of that stuff, but it puts too much pressure on people. I'm not starting anything new until February. But a big intention for me kind of links with what you said, of engaging with the things that fill my cup, that fill me up, that give me a sense of purpose, and yeah, just fill me up and make me feel happy. And noticing the stuff that doesn't fill my cup up quite so much, and finding ways to manage those things. So finding ways that I can delegate, or that I can strategize around them so that they're easier, because it's not that I can just not do them. Some of them are responsibilities. But yeah, trying to spend more time in the stuff and engaging with the stuff that fills my cup, and finding ways to manage the stuff that doesn't fill my cup up quite so much.
Traitors, being a cup filler for sure.
Yes, for sure. I've loved having to do my homework for this today.
Yeah. Okay, good stuff. Well, that's I guess our concluding point for today. So yeah, great to catch up again and to get the podcast
Yes.
moving. And yeah, if anyone wants to provide any comments or feedback or views or perspectives about the sisterhood, then we'd love to hear from you.